Welcome to Latte with a Lawyer, a podcast dedicated to bringing you the stories of some of America's most successful lawyers, figuring out what makes them tick, how they creatively solve problems, and how others aspiring to be them can follow in their footsteps. Here's your host, Jacob Wells.
All right. Welcome to Latte with the Lawyer. I'm your host, Jacob Wells, and today I'm really excited because we have a great episode for you. We're going to be talking with Cindy Phillips about her work with the Freedom Foundation, and I'm really excited to hear her unique international perspective coming from Canada. So here's our guest, Cindy Phillips. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Jacob. It's so nice to be here.
Thanks so much for spending some of your time with us today. I have to ask you this question I ask everybody, since it is called Latte with a Lawyer. What is your beverage of choice that gets you fired up in the morning?
Okay, don't hate me. It is not coffee. I am
Really?
a tea drinker
Okay.
from Canada, so I drink tea with milk and 2 sugars, and that's how I start my day.
So what kind of tea?
Okay, I'm all about black teas. Specifically, like an English breakfast is really like, I want a nice flavorful black tea. That's how I start my day. Yeah.
Awesome. So take us back to what it was like in Canada when you were in school, how you got interested in law in the first place, and where your beginnings came from.
Yeah, so I grew up in Canada, spent my entire life there until I decided to go to law school. Originally, I was actually going to become a high school teacher. I knew from a young age that I wanted to be involved in people's lives and be able to help them at, like, you know, the most basic level. And so initially I was going to be a high school teacher, realized I loved kids, hated everything else about it. And so I decided that the next best option was to be a lawyer, get to help people in the same kind of way, really involved in their life and how their, you know, sort of daily struggles are existing and what they're going through. And so I decided to go to law school. I ended up going to Liberty University in Virginia for law school, which was a great experience. I graduated in 2018 and took the bar out here in Washington State. And I really didn't have any sort of inclination of what I really wanted to do. And when I found out about the Freedom Foundation and how they're like directly impacting public sector employees in Washington State, I knew that this would be a really good fit for me to be able to help people. And so I made my transition. I moved from Virginia over here to Washington, and I've been here ever since.
Cool. So for those of the viewers who don't know about the Freedom Foundation, can you walk us through exactly what they do and what it's like working with them?
Yeah, so we're a 501c3 nonprofit focused on open public government and accountable government. And a big focus of that is public sector unions. We assist public sector employees represented by unions in bargaining units to be able to refrain from union membership if that's their choice, or to assist them as they go through the process of being part of a union, or just simply being represented by their union. So we assist with legal matters, with other policy matters. We touch on a number of areas, but the biggest thing is that we assist the people who are struggling for one reason or another to be able to assert their own First Amendment rights.
Amazing. So coming from Canada, I think it, you know, gives you a unique perspective. Do you think, you know, maybe something else? Is there anything that you've done differently that you think has made you successful in your career? You know, like anything not related to law, maybe something a little bit different. I think I find like talking to a lot of lawyers, they're sometimes involved in extracurricular things that, you know, might not be related to law, but give them that added edge coming from a different direction.
Yeah, I would say that the first thing that comes to mind when you ask this question is I volunteer with my local church. I'm actually one of the adult youth leaders, and so I spend a lot of time having super awkward conversations. I'm sure you remember teenagers and young adults. They are still figuring out who they are and how to, talk to adults and how to like be confident in who they are. And so
Right.
doing that on a weekly basis has really been able to push me to be able to interact with people of all races, ages, genders across the board, because clients are not one size fits all, right? You are dealing with people who either have a ton of time, who are able to talk to you, and who want to spend 2 hours on the phone with you explaining everything that's happened to them. And then you have other clients who are like, I am struggling so much. I'm working 2 jobs in addition to this job that you're helping me with. And I don't have time with my kids and with my sick mother that I'm taking care of to be able to like take this time. And I need you to be as efficient as possible. But having the experience of like spending time in conversation, in community with these young people in my community, at my church, it's really been able to push me to be able to have those conversations and to work through, 1 minute I might be on the phone with a client who is taking care of their, sick son or daughter. And then like 10 minutes later, I'm on another call for another case with a judge and opposing counsel, and being able to like quickly transition between, I'm in this scenario and I have my head in the space of like, I'm sympathetic, I am here to assist you, versus like, I'm a zealous advocate for my client. That has been like the best experience for me.
Yeah, it's really interesting you bring that up, because one of the things I discovered recently that a lot of lawyers are using is improv, and it's kind of similar in that respect, because one of the exercises that I remember they went over was like, as you said, jumping from talking to your client and then talking to other lawyers, you have to talk to different people differently. So I think it's kind of similar experience in that respect. I was going to ask you if were there any cases that come to mind working with the public sector employees that were really meaningful to you? Anything that stands out?
Yeah, I have 2 in particular. The first one that comes to mind is a case called Ochoa versus SEIU 775. It's still in the Ninth Circuit. So, it's publicly accessible. People can go look it up. But Miss Ochoa, she takes care of a sick family member. She's an individual provider in Washington State. And an individual from the union came to her front door in 2016 and asked her to sign a membership card. Ms. Ochoa said, I do not want to sign this card, please go away. This person leaves, and Ms. Ochoa sees her writing on this iPad. And she remembers specifically calling out, please do not put my name on anything. And she comes to find out after the Janus decision, which is sort of fundamental to the First Amendment rights for public sector employees, that came out in 2018. She finds out in 2018, oh, I'm not required to pay union dues anymore. I don't want to do that. And then she finds out, actually, somebody in 2016, that person who came to my door, forged my signature on this card.
Wow.
And so we were able to assist Ms. Ochoa by getting her money back, plus some damages, payments out from the union. So now she's currently fighting the state to have the system change so that this kind of scenario can't happen to other IPs. These individuals work in their own homes, often with family or friends, and so they're not in a workplace where they can talk to another coworker or have a chat by the drinking fountain or something like that. And so it's really difficult for them to find out either their rights or things that they can get changed. They don't know these things because they don't have access to this kind of information. And so being able to help Ms. Ochoa assert her rights, and now she's continuing the charge to try and assist other IPs, I think is very impactful. And it's been a pleasure working with her.
Yeah,
and
wow.
Then,
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and then probably the second case that I can think of is slightly different. So in our attempts to assist people, informing them of their rights, et cetera, we often file public record requests, which are very similar to FOIA for the federal government. So we submit those to Washington State, and we had submitted some requests to the University of Washington a number of years ago, and the union interceded and was trying to prevent the foundation from being able to get this information. I was able to take that case to the Washington State Supreme Court, and I won a decision 9-0, which granted us the rights to those records. The records were being said that they were non-disclosable because they were emails unrelated to the work, but the emails were on UW servers. They were with a name at uw.org email address, and so we were arguing, if you send an email, there's a possibility that it can be redacted, but if you're sending from your work email, your work is entitled, and if your work happens to be the government, then the public has a right to know what you're talking about. And the Washington State Supreme Court agreed with us, and we were able to get those records. And so that was like probably the most exciting day of my entire legal career thus far.
Wow.
Slightly different than obviously individuals like Ms. Ochoa, who I get to help on a daily basis, but still something pivotal that can really impact the way that other people obtain public records and have access to the records that are made in Washington State.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I'm curious about both of those cases have to do with public records, have to do with technology, right? With Ms. Ochoa forging the signature. How do we prevent these things, and where do you think things are going in the future to avoid stuff like this happening?
Yeah, I think it's a twofold scenario. I think on the front end, individuals just need to be informed of their rights. And so organizations like the Freedom Foundation and like other organizations throughout the country have an obligation and have been doing exactly this. They've been attempting to inform people of their rights. And I think as these organizations continue to push forward and continue to be able to spread their message widely, I think that is imperative, right? People, can only assert rights they know about. The perfect example is your Miranda rights. Like, the reason why so many people know about them is because it's on TV every single day, right? And so if we can get First Amendment rights when it comes to unions and public sector unions, if that kind of knowledge can be widely spread, so that somebody who doesn't work at a government job, but their mom does, they know about it and they can tell their mom, like, that's exactly what we're looking for. So first, I think, is that people need to know. And then I think second is that the government is here to serve the people. And so the idea that they are not the best people to inform their employees and to inform the public of these rights is sort of asinine to me. And I think that really they're similarly in an incredible position to be able to inform their employees of their rights. And if they get a membership card, for example, right? The union says this person has signed this card, take X amount of dues out, do it by this date. Then it would be so easy for the government agency to send an email to their employee that says, hey, it could be automated. It could just say, hey, we saw that this is coming out. Please confirm yes or no that this is what you wanted. Like, the same way that if you want to donate to some other organization, or you want to pay extra to a retirement plan, all of those things, there are ways that the government confirms that that's exactly what you want to do. And that kind of behavior could be such a small change, but it could genuinely affect. So people like Ms. Ochoa would never miss these opportunities, right? And then similarly, like, if the government made sure that its public employees knew, hey, when you're sending an email on your work email, it is public knowledge, right? If those kinds of things were better known, then there's less issues across the board, right? Then it's clear, this is government property, this is what we're using, this is what we're doing, these are These are the exact systems we have in place to protect you as our employee. And I think that with those two systems working together, right, agencies and organizations like the Freedom Foundation informing public employees and informing other United States citizens of their rights, and then the government actually doing its job to protect its employees, I think that combination would make all of the difference.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really interesting the example you bring up with the Miranda rights, because that's definitely very prevalent within media. So if we were able to get, not just the Miranda rights, but what you were talking about, to be in a TV show, to be in a movie, and just to educate people, I think it's a great step forward. And is there anything that you recommend people like reading to be informed, like any books on this?
No books in particular, but obviously people can always check out the Freedom Foundation's website. Another great organization that we work with a lot is National Right to Work. National Right to Work also deals with private sector unions. So if people have questions about that, but both of those places have great resources where you can find out more about the work that we do, what your rights are. The Freedom Foundation specifically has a website called optouttoday.com where people can look at their state, what job they work, what union they're part of, and find out exactly the information that they need to send in to change or what their rights are. All of that information is on there. There's a lot of really great electronic resources.
Yeah, that's very helpful.
Yeah.
Amazing. And furthermore, if anybody's like really interested in our conversation and wants to reach out to you and get more information about you, what is the best way to do that?
Yeah, they can email me at sphillips@freedomfoundation.com.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Cindy. I really enjoyed our conversation. This has been Jacob Wells for Latte with the Lawyer. I want to thank Cindy Phillips of the Freedom Foundation for joining us today. And thanks to our sponsor, EmotionTrac, without a K, that uses artificial intelligence and mobile app audiences to economically and quickly gather focus group research and data for trials and mediations. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thanks, Jacob.
Have a great one.